All righty. So today, I want to talk to you about one of my favorite people. And I have a lot of favorite people, a lot of favorite teachers, actually. How about you? Do you have a variety of favorite teachers? This is my year to share with you throughout the year some of my favorite things. I feel a little bit like that song that Julie Andrews used to sing, my favorite things, and I'm not going to break out in song. But anyway, I've been sharing with you favorite teachings from science and favorite spiritual practices and some favorite Bible passages or Bible characters, and there are certainly some characters in the Bible. But today I want to share with you from a favorite teacher. I have favorite spiritual teachers. Jesus, obviously, is high on my list, but he's not the only one on my list in terms of favorite spiritual teachers. The Buddha is, and so is Lao Tzu. I have favorite thinkers that are on my list. Einstein, for sure, is one. I have favorite humanitarians on my list. Martin Luther King Jr., Mahatma Gandhi, Mother Theresa. And that's what I want to talk to you about this morning, is Mother Theresa. It's been a while since we've done a survey of our community, but the last one that we did revealed that about 80% of the members and visitors and guests of the Unity Center are former Catholics. I'm not a former Catholic, I'm a former Lutheran person, but the vast majority of our community seem to be former Catholics. And of course, Mother Teresa was a nun. She was born in 1910. She founded the Missionaries of Charity in 1950 when she was all of 40 years old. She dedicated her life and her work to helping the poorest of the poor, the sick, the invalid, orphaned children. In 1979, she was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. In 1997, she died at the age of 87. In 2003, Pope John Paul II beatified her. I had to look that up and understand what that means, and in part what it means is that it is a step on the path to a person in the Catholic faith to be recognized as a saint, and perhaps that will happen to her or about her at some point in time. I want to talk to you about some of the things that we can learn from her and some of the ways that we might be inspired to be better people, to be better moms, to be better dads, to be better sisters and brothers and citizens. Certainly there is not everything about Mother Teresa that I agree with. There's a lot in her theology, there's a lot of things that she spoke out about that I would not agree with. But I can set that aside and recognize the tremendous value and the tremendous good that she did, and how she still does, when I think about her, inspire me to be a better person. I am so grateful that I had the opportunity quite a number of years ago to be one of thousands of people sitting outside listening to her give a speech here in San Diego. And one of the things that I was struck by, even though I knew this because I had seen her on television before, I was struck to be in a gathering of people listening to her and thinking about the tremendous influence that she has had and the tremendous good that she had done, and to see what a tiny little lady she was. So tiny yet so powerful, so powerful. So here's the first of 6 ideas. Themes, I think, that ran through her life and things that might inspire us. The first is to be used for a higher purpose. We are human beings, yes, and we are more than that. We are more than that. We can choose in our lives to be used for a higher purpose, a purpose of greater good. Now that can sound very noble, that can sound very lofty. We might say, yeah, that's fine for people like Mother Teresa and Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. and so forth, but I'm just me. Don't ever, in fact, if there were ever a time or a way that we would blaspheme God, if you will, it would be to hold a thought like, but I'm just me. Each and every one of us is made in the image and after the likeness of the one presence, the one power, in the image and after the likeness of God. To choose to be used for a higher purpose, to choose to be used for greater good, is a choice I think each and every one of us are meant to make, to be an instrument for that. And I know that to the degree you keep your eyes open, that there are places and times and opportunities where you work, the people that you live with, the people you live next door to, that you have an opportunity to choose to be a vehicle of something that is a blessing, something that is good. Mother Theresa used to say, don't wait for the leaders, do it yourself, do it alone, person to person, a little bit like tag, you're it. You know, Spirit saying, tag, you're it, I need you to be a vehicle for greater good in this circle with the people that you live with and that you work with. It's so tempting to wait for somebody else to do it first. I think our role is to be the ones that are willing to do it first. I'm reminded of the story of two little brothers who were attending Sunday school, and in Sunday school they were learning to be more like Jesus. They were learning to ask themselves, how would Jesus act? What would Jesus do? And they were learning things about being loving and kind and patient and tolerant and forgiving. And though they were learning about that in Sunday school, the mom kept seeing them constantly fighting back and forth and bickering. And she turns to them and she says to them, what is it that you're learning in Sunday school? And they pipe in and they say, to be more like Jesus. And she says, well, then why in the heck aren't you doing it? And the older one turns to the younger one and says, okay, Bobby, you be Jesus first. And aren't we a little bit like that? Okay, you be more forgiving first. You understand first. You go the second mile first, and then I'll do it. But I think people like Mother Teresa inspire us to be the ones that say, I will do it first. I will do it first. A second key theme of her life, obviously, was the theme of love. The theme of love. To choose love. It really is always a choice. As we talked about last week when I gave a lesson on relationship practices and how to deal with sandpaper people to your soul, we talked then as well about the importance of love and recognizing love not just as a noun, but absolutely as a verb. And what does a verb, as part of language, what is a verb known for? It's action. It's to do something, to choose love. Mother Teresa said, if you want to make peace, you don't talk to your friends, you talk to your enemies. Would that not require love? Yeah, because what's the tendency that we have around people that we don't like? We don't tend to want to rush in and be with them. And yet she says, if you want to make peace, which is an aspect, I think, of love, you don't just talk to your friends. You talk to your enemies. It's like Jesus saying, you're not rewarded if you only love those who love you. That's easy. The reward, the growth comes when you love beyond the easy. She also talked about spreading love everywhere you go and leaving behind a trail of happiness, not because you have left, but because you were there. Because you were there, she talked about not ever letting anyone come into your presence without leaving a little happier for having been in your presence. Some people seem to just pull others down, a little bit like crabs in a basket. You know, when a fisherman is catching crabs, when he can put one in a basket, as soon as he puts a second one in, he doesn't have to put the lid on. Do you know why? Because as long as there is more than one in, as soon as one starts to crawl up the top, the others will pull him right back down. Have you ever been around people that are a little bit like that? Yeah. But just because that consciousness or that behavior still exists in places in the world does not mean that that is the level at which we are going to play. You see, by putting your foot on the spiritual path, which I believe you have, or you wouldn't make time to be here on a Sunday morning. By making the choice to put your foot on a spiritual path, you have made a choice to live from a higher place, to live from a higher perspective, to expect more of yourself, and to do it first, A third point from her life is the emphasis that she placed on the home and how important the home is, not the home in terms of the physicality of the home, but the importance of home as a starting point for learning everything else in life that is important. The importance of home as being the place to practice peace, the place to practice love. I happen to think it would be pretty easy to be a consistently loving, non-judgmental person, living as a hermit atop a mountaintop. Very easy to do. Why? Because there's nobody else around. But have you noticed how challenging it can be to sometimes how challenging it can be to be your very best self around the people who installed the buttons you're trying to undo in yourself? Have you noticed that, or am I the only person that has noticed that? She was an advocate of starting at home. She said, peace and war begin at home. If we truly want peace in the world, let us begin by loving one another in our own families. If we want to spread joy, we need for every family to have joy. Is there somebody in your family, close or extended family, that is a little challenging for you to love? I suspect there might be. I know there is in my life. That is the place to practice that higher road, to practice loving right here at home, and then building upon that in ever wide circles. She said, we sometimes think that poverty is only being hungry, naked, and homeless. The poverty of being unwanted, unloved, and uncared for is truly the greatest poverty. We must start in our own homes to remedy this kind of poverty. A fourth point from her teaching is the idea of doing what we can to make a positive difference, and doing it with courage and with a generous heart. She wrote a book. I haven't read it, but this is a story from the book. The name of the book is In My Own Words. And in it, she tells of a story of a mother and the great courage the mother demonstrated in using what she had, not only for herself, but for others. Mother Theresa had learned that this particular woman had a family of 8, and they had been without food for quite some time. Certainly not an unusual circumstance for the people that Mother Teresa tried to help. But when she heard about this particular family, she decided to personally go over to their home that night with enough rice that all of them could be fed for the evening meal. And when she went to deliver the rice, the mother took the rice and divided it in half, and then left and went next door, and then came back. And when Mother Teresa asked her, where did she go and what did she do? She said, they are hungry too. And that they was her next door neighbor, a Muslim family, she was Hindu, a Muslim family of 8 who also were hungry. Mother Teresa wrote about how she was touched by this woman's courage of heart, despite her own very real difficult circumstances, and how she, Mother Teresa, decided not to deprive the mother of the obvious joy that the mother felt to be able to make a difference in this other family's life. And so Mother Teresa wrote, I didn't bring her any more rice that night, but I did go back the next night and bring her some more. I loved that. I love so many of the nuances of that story. It inspires me that even when I feel that I'm dealing with something really dark or sad or painful in my life, how important it is for me to still keep my heart open to those around me who likewise may be dealing with difficulties as well, and not to use my own pain as a reason to shut down and not also be aware that others may be suffering and hurting right now as well. It reminds me, and I'm inspired, that I really do have more than enough all of the time and can always share of something and make a difference. Mother Theresa used to say, I ask you one thing, do not tire of giving, but do not give your leftovers. Boy, is that something to stretch into. Boy, is that something to aspire to. Do not tire of giving, but do not give your leftovers. Give the best that you have to give. The fifth is the importance and the emphasis that she put on cultivating the inner life so that we could strengthen the outer life. To cultivate the inner life so we could strengthen the outer life. She used to write about and speak about how when her days seemed unrealistically full with things to do, that those were the days that she would double up on her prayer work. And I think, boy, how many times am I guilty of, if my day's really long, instead of doubling up on my prayer work, I go, oh, well, maybe today I'll do a shorter one. And maybe you find that about yourself sometimes as well. And she would say that when her day was particularly full, that the doubling up of her prayer time was so that she could meet the demands of that day. She talked about finding God in silence, spending time in silence, so that we can be clear to do what is ours to do. And then finally, you're probably familiar that one of the things she emphasized so much is a really simple thing. She emphasized the value of a simple smile. And she encouraged people to never underestimate the difference that a smile can make. I know that I've been on the receiving end of someone, a stranger, or somebody checking me out in a grocery line, just looking me in the eye, really looking me in the eye as they're serving me or waiting on me, and smiling, and how if I was in kind of a frustrated mood or a cranky mood or just a sad mood, that smile, that genuine connection could just help to brighten how I was feeling in that moment. I wonder how many times we have blessed someone and helped someone to be in a much better place at a critical time in their life by simply being willing to slow down and really look that person in the eye and make that connection and smile. And smile. Not just a smile that you flash for the camera, but the smile of one person meeting and seeing and recognizing another. She talked so much about the lack in our country, in cultivated countries, and that the lack that we seem to have here is that human connection lack, the poverty of spirit, the poverty of relationship. And that one of the ways to begin to shift that was to really, really connect with one another. My words, paraphrasing, but to connect with one another. So quick recap here. I hope you've been inspired maybe to think a little bit about this tiny little woman who made such a big difference in the world and stood for something so great in a way that inspires you to maybe reach just a little bit higher So the points were to choose to be used for greater good. The second was to always choose love, recognizing that love in its most beautifulness is really a verb. The third was to start first at home. To start first at home with your family, making sure that you're doing what needs to be done there. The fourth was to do what you can do with courage and with generosity. The fifth was to cultivate your inner life so that you can strengthen your outer life. And the last, most simple, was smile. Turn to somebody around you right now and just smile. A genuine smile. A heart-to-heart smile. A real connection. Namaste. All righty.